Welcome to the Wandering Tangent Podcast. I'm BJ. With me is Jeff. And once more, we are joined by special guest star,
permanent guest star.
Just semi-permanent guest star.
Just straight up starred this podcast because every episode he's been in is doing gangbusters better than the ones that are...
I have my theories. We can discuss that later.
Okay. But anyway, today we're talking about the 1975
Fish Story.
Fish Story? It's
Yeah.
like thriller, adventure, horror. Anyway, it's a classic. Jaws.
Yeah. Look at us doing popular movies.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about this last time, like, because I'm the one that chose this movie. This was one of the two choices I had to do on Independence Day, because this movie also takes place over the 4th of July, but I gave Jeff at the time the choice of Gettysburg or Jaws, so he chose Gettysburg.
Yes, and this is also a 4th of July movie, so both of them. They're actually not 4th of July
movies. It's almost
movies.
as if I just said that.
Yeah, exactly. But they take place over the 4th of July. Like, they're the same in that, or they're not meant to be 4th of July movies.
No, but yeah, as I literally just, I'm trying
but
to be
when I
nicer
said it
to
was...
Jeff, because I go back and listen to these things. I'm just mean to Jeff all the time. I'm like, I need to be nicer. Then he does stuff like this.
It's
Your conscience is speaking to you, BJ.
It's kind of like people make the argument about Die Hard, it being a Christmas movie or not. So, on the other hand, the genre of 4th of July movies, I don't think is actually established as opposed to the genre of Christmas movies. So, there's a bit more of a leeway there, I guess.
Well, fun fact for long-time listeners of the podcast, if you think all the way back to our Christmas episodes, we said something along the lines of we had plans to watch something else and then did the holiday special instead. It was actually supposed to be Die Hard by Jeff's choice, but then he changed his mind and inflicted the holiday special on me instead.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes I just have a dark personality that comes out, wants to inflict terrible movies on poor BJ. But you were a good sport, and somehow you survived through it.
It's his way of getting back at me for being mean to him for the past 30 or something years.
Could be.
Well, it's character building is what it is.
I don't think I would describe the holiday special as character building, but we're not here to talk about bad movies. We're here to talk about a good movie for once.
In fact, it was probably almost character destroying if you look at it. But they somehow managed to survive that. Let's go back to Jaws.
All right, BJ, what did you think of Jaws? What is your non-spoiler assessment of this movie?
It's great. Watch it.
All right. Well said.
Podcast over. Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Shortest episode ever.
Okay. Well, hey.
In all honesty, I have the same opinion. It's great. Watch it.
Okay,
watch
Jeff.
it with who? Like, get 3-year-old kids and be like, hey, guys, let's learn about sharks today. Oh, look, here's the movie Jaws.
Well, to be entirely fair, Jaws got rated as PG back in the day when there was no such thing as PG-13.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's a good assessment.
So I actually watched the making of Jaws that was included with my Blu-ray, and they said that they had to cut out a few things to get the PG rating instead of the R back in the day. But to be entirely fair, if this movie was today, it would definitely be a PG-13. So.
Oh yeah, if not straight up R, depending on how many lines they cross.
I think it would still get PG-13 in this day and age with the current edit.
What's the? Have you guys seen the horrible? But so bad it kind of turns the corner again to being vaguely okay movies Meg, the Meg movie, and its upcoming sequel.
I've never heard of this.
I watched it on the airplane flying tour from Hawaii years and years ago.
Oh, it is a very interesting experience. I can't remember what it's rated right off the top of my head.
This is a Megalodon movie that you're talking about, right?
Megalodon.
Am I keeping up with the conversation? Okay. Yeah, the Meg movies, which is a term for all Megalodon movies. Apparently there's so many that there's now a term for them.
Now, so.
It's PG-13 is the Meg.
Oh, okay. So maybe it would be, because that one was like...
Okay, so people know what we're talking about. Anyone want to define what a Megalodon is?
It's a Megalodon.
Everyone jumped in at once. I do. I want to say. Go ahead, BJ.
Okay. So a Megalodon is a prehistoric shark, which is thought to be extinct, but
that's an interesting way. It's extinct. Large. It's thought to be extinct. It is extinct, really. I mean,
yes. Chances are it's extinct, but
it's a big ocean.
It's a big ocean. Fun fact, more people have been on the moon than to the deepest part of the ocean. So take that as you will.
Well, both are very hostile environments. So, yeah.
So my turn. So, yes. What do I think of this movie?
Yes. It's
good. Watch it.
Okay. Thank you for listening to Wander Tangent Podcast. We'll see you next time.
Well,
Okay, I'm going to say something real quick. Okay, so obviously it's a shark movie. Everyone knows about that. It's not a spoiler thing. It's on the picture, on the logo, on, you pick up a DVD, you know it's a shark movie. But it is a really great movie about people coming to terms with what they don't want to happen. There's a lot of denial in it. It's really great characters. The things that they go through is great. The storyline is great. So it's a good movie. It's probably not great for young kids because it really should be a PG-13, not a PG movie. But
again,
definitely
made back in the day before PG-13 was a thing.
Yep.
And the depictions of people getting eaten by the sharks are pretty graphic. So I'd say...
Yes, people get eaten in this movie, not child-friendly.
Oh, yeah, definitely not. In fact, actually, children get eaten in this movie, which is one of those, wow, I did not remember that.
Well, one child, so...
No, well...
It's only one, so it's okay, I guess.
One child and a whole bunch of adults.
I should also note that I'm the only person who's not a parent here, so maybe that's why I was the only one that laughed at there was only one kid, so it's okay joke.
Oh, that you definitely kind of. We'll get
I felt the glares through the internet on that one.
We'll get into spoilers later. Later.
I think we're ready for spoilers. Let's get into spoilers now. So let's move on and talk about this movie.
Okay.
Okay, so it's set in New England town, right? Like, what was Amity?
Yeah.
On an island?
Amity
Island.
Not New... Wait, is this a New England town we're talking about?
New England, yeah.
Okay.
Where did you think it was, Jeff?
I don't know. Key West, somewhere south?
No, that's later movies.
Oh, I'm mixing up my Jaws movie. Wait.
Have you guys seen the other Jaws movies?
Famous quote about that, Michael, what's his name? Michael, not Sheen. Michael, he played the butler in one of the Batman movies.
Michael Caine?
Michael Caine. He starred in one of the Jaws movies. And when asked about that, he said, I'd never seen the movie, but I am very happy about my third house, which it paid for.
Yeah, I'm looking through things. Michael Caine was in I'm doing air quotes really hard right here, the really good one, which is Jaws the Revenge.
Jaws the Revenge?
Spoiler alert. Jaws the Revenge is, to be fair, I watched it on TV once upon a time when I was a child, but even as a child I remember thinking, man, this movie kind of sucks.
Well,
okay, a little confession here. I actually like all of the Jaws sequels. But not completely like this one. The original Jaws movie was very different. It He was much more serious.
The
other ones are really more of an action flick, weird, fun thing.
I remember the second one being okay-ish. The third one is just really funny to watch on TV because it was 3D. And like the scene of the 3D shark like breaking through... I'm going to spoiler Jaws 3, I guess. Just a really poorly animated 3D shark breaking through like the waterside windows in the Uber SeaWorld it's attacking is just
I think SeaWorld's number 2, right?
No, that's number 3.
Oh, okay. Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's the rest of the Jaws movies kind of give rise to a lot of our current shark-related horror/action, and it's kind of sad when you think about this movie being the origin of all of that. When we get into because I know right now we're in the spoiler territory, but we haven't really gotten into. But when we really get into spoilers, we'll start talking about it, and there's some really like deep themes and really good direction with it. And then it kind of the rest of the movies are like, we had this really successful Jaws movie. What made it successful? I know. We had a shark in it. We'll just put sharks in it, and that'll make a successful movie.
Yeah, this happens all the time with movies. They start off with a very specific kind of story to entertain people or to give them fear or whatever it is. And then to make sequels, they just kind of take one aspect of it and enlarge upon that. And it's usually action. It's usually, let's have more battles or more suspense or something like that. But what was unique about Jaws is that this movie was kind of based on some real events that happened. There was one particular one from... Sorta, I'm okay with, but there was an actual incident in around the New England area in 1916 where there was a shark that attacked several different people within about a week's period.
Yeah, me and Gary just keep bouncing off each other.
Well, okay.
Go ahead.
So
Go ahead,
there's an interesting thing. Now here's a tangent, and you guys are going to wonder about where I'm going with this. But trust me, have you ever heard of? There's a YouTuber, Minecraft YouTuber. His name is Mumbo Jumbo. No.
Nope.
No. BJ.
Nope.
Okay. Mumbo Jumbo he's a Minecraft YouTuber, but here's the thing about him. He's kind of this really small-time aspiring, or at least he was, a really small-time aspiring filmmaker, and he didn't know what he wanted to do other than make movies. And then he was playing a video game at one point, and he decided to make a YouTube of him playing a video game, and the video game happened to be Minecraft at the time. Well, because he had done such a good job, people thought he had made a good movie, and then he started doing more of those little Minecraft YouTube movies, right? And he found out something in the process of doing this. It doesn't matter what you're making the movie about. If you've made a good movie, most people will appreciate what that movie is. So, Jaws, how well Steven Spielberg, and so no spoilers here. The director Steven Spielberg, music by John Williams. This is, and then we get into some of the cast: Roy Schneider, Richard Dreyfuss, Robert Shaw. Some stellar performances by these actors, and you've got the makings of a really, really good movie here, right? These guys, Steven Spielberg, when he really, really wants to, he makes some gold movies, and John Williams, I don't know. I guess he's kind of good at music. Maybe.
John Williams is okay.
He's okay.
He's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get anything else, I guess. You can get by with John Williams.
But yeah, so the key is making a good movie, which is what some other people forgot. They just put a shark in it and thought that would make money. Unfortunately, they did for a while. So hence we got a million sequels to the sequels that kind of lost the heart and soul of the idea of what the movie was originally about. And Jeff, you were saying it's based loosely on real events, and then
yeah, it is.
So
go ahead,
BJ. Go ahead, really quick. So Jaws the movie is actually based off Jaws the book by Peter Benchley, who was also the TV reporter in Jaws, like the guys, like the TV anchor at like talking to camera right before the fake shark scare. So yeah, it's based on the book, but he was on as part of the behind the scenes thing I watched. So yeah, he did kind of base the shark attacks off of the 1916 attacks that Jeff's talking about, but apparently also before he wrote the book, like the thing that like kind of put his butt in the gear to actually write the book, because I guess he'd been thinking about writing a shark book for a while, is that he read an article where great white, not as big as the shark in Jaws is made out to be, but a large shark, which is not usual in North England waters, was caught by someone. So yeah, it's based off true events in the same way that like most horror movies are, I guess.
Yeah.
Something like that happened. So,
well,
was he was he an uncredited writer? Do you think?
The author?
Yeah.
So he was actually credited, but
okay.
He wrote sort of the.
No, but was he credited as a writer or an actor?
Yeah. Oh, he was credited as as a writer.
Oh, okay.
So he kind of did I don't know what script writing terms are. He wrote like the first pass, and then a few other people kind of worked on it as well to get it easy to make it more movie-like. Because I will also say, and in case this comes up as part of the conversation, I did actually read the book Jaws earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
And just as a minor spoiler, the movie's better.
Oh,
okay. The movie has a lot more content in it, right? Because they had to condense a lot, from what I understand, from the book in order to fit it into a movie.
Yeah, so to go off what they said in the making of special I watched, they took everything out that they streamlined it to as more of an action movie than what the book was. So I will say that the characters in the movie are way more likable than the characters in the book. I might as well.
How so?
Well, so there's two big things in my mind that they scrapped from the book. The lesser one is that the reason why the mayor is so eager to keep the beaches open despite the shark is not because he's worried about the finances of the townsfolk. It's because the mafia has invested in Amity Island, so if they don't get the money back, the mob is going to be very mad.
Someone's looking forward to broken legs, huh?
Yeah, and then the second thing they cut out from the movie from the book, and thank heavens they did, because it was awful. Hooper and Brody's wife have an affair.
Hooper and whose wife?
The police chief.
Chief Brody's wife. What's her character's name? Ellen. Mm-hmm. They have an affair because. So in the book,
both of them.
Wait, what? No, they have an affair individually. Jeff, what do you think?
I don't know. How do these things work exactly?
Okay, so what happens is that in the book, the chief's wife, Ellen, she is not very happy with her situation. You know, she's not happy on the island because she's not treated like an islander, and her marriage with the chief is not as loving as it is in the movie. So it just so happens that she used to date the scientist's older brother. So
the
when he
scientist
shows
they
up,
bring in from the Oceanographic Institute or whatever.
Yeah, Matt Hooper. So when he shows up, he's sort of a blast from her past, right? She recognizes him, he recognizes her. So since she's not happy in her current situation, after some extremely cringy dialogue that I really don't want to get into in this podcast, they have an affair, and Brody suspects. So the buddy between Chief Brody and Matt Hooper is not in the book, because the chief thinks / knows that his wife is having an affair with this guy.
So he's a bit more.
But wait, it's Hooper's brother, right?
So
no,
That's-
so
Hooper.
So in the past, Ellen had dated Matt Hooper's older brother. So
Okay. So Hooper comes and she's like, well, he's close enough, right?
yeah, basically.
Okay.
um,
the
I'm trying
the
to
conversation-
understand. I'm trying.
so she's
the conversation that leads to it is not good. I don't want to talk about it because it almost made me stop reading the book.
so what you're saying is in the book.
You were looking forward to the point where the shark was now in the book.
Yeah, Martin
Like, let's
Brody
just get
is
to the
like
shark part.
Martin Brody's like, hey Hooper, you got that shark cage? Yeah, let's stuff you in that for a little bit. Maybe I can loosen the bolts.
So fun fact, Hooper dies in the book.
Oh, okay.
And I will also say that the ending of the book
Does he die in the shark cage? I mean,
Yes.
that's where you would expect anyone
Yeah.
to die, is in the
yeah,
shark cage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
goes down the shark cage and the shark breaks into the cage and gets him. So, and I will also say that the ending to the book is almost painfully anticlimactic. I read it and then it ended and I'm like, what just happened? I had to go online and to read a summary to figure out what just happened. So basically in the book, the shark eats Hooper, the shark eats Quint, and the shark's about to eat Brody, but then it dies of its wounds. The end.
Which makes a lot more sense, but not.
It
as
actually does make a little more
as
sense.
What we're getting to when we talk about.
It's not nearly as satisfying as the ending to the movie.
Yes. So this movie is basically two. In my opinion, it feels like there's two main segments. There's what happens on the island, and then what happens on the boat. Do we want to cover it like that then, or do we want to just skip to the fun bits?
But one thing I wanted to mention is going back to the rewrites, BJ. Definitely, you're right. Obviously, the movie rewrites are much better for the film, at least the changes from the book. But one thing that I really like about this movie is that there's certain aspects of the storyline that did happen in 1916, and one of them is that after the shark attacks started happening, people were reluctant to shut down the beach because it would hurt the economy. Their local economy was a tourist-based economy, so they didn't want to shut down the beaches. They didn't want to do any of that. In fact, they didn't even have a major press release at all. The story about the first victim was a small story that wasn't even on the front page. It was further back in the newspaper of the time, and it didn't even mention a shark. It just said somebody had been attacked by a fish. Didn't even say the word shark. It's incredible.
Who was the first victim in this quote-unquote original story?
The original story, I don't have them all in my head, but I can pull it up. But there was there were several. Yeah. I don't know the first victim, but the first victim was attacked by the shark. He was just out swimming, and he was attacked by the shark. They went out, and a lifeguard actually dragged him in, and he didn't make it very long. But anyway, there were several more attacks, and the shark eventually went up a river.
Okay, yeah.
And the shark went up a river, and that's where children were playing, was in this river. And so there were more shark attacks along the river. So in this movie, the shark goes into kind of like a canal of some sort.
Yeah.
It goes into, and what's the word?
They call it the pond.
Estuary?
An estuary.
Yeah. It's a little kind of side area that's harder to get into, so they think it's safer.
Yeah, so the real story from 1916, there was a pushback to not close the beach, and they reopened it and more people got attacked because the beach wasn't closed. They also put lots of guards out there after they reopened the beach. They thought, well, we'll just attack the shark when it swims in, and we'll put up railing and guard. They had like metal nets under the water. They tried all sorts of things to keep the beaches open, but the attacks kept happening. And the shark also went up in a canal, went right where they didn't expect the shark to go, and there were more attacks. So all of that, those components in this later movie from 1975, there's pieces of truth in them from 1916. And one of those is that when people are told something's unsafe and you have to shut it down, it's really hard sometimes for them to shut it down because it requires enormous sacrifice, and a lot of times people aren't willing to do that. So in Jaws, I think it's great how they make that happen. The sheriff is all ready to close down the beach. It doesn't take him long to come to that conclusion. But then there's pushback where the local business people, including the mayor, they come out and they say, no, let's not do this. Let's not ruin our businesses in one of the most important days of the year.
And it comes at a cost. In the first section of this movie, there's like it covers that where there's kind of the dynamic is between the sheriff and the mayor, and the sheriff initially wants to shut down the beach in the movie, and the mayor says no, and then there's and a lot of the institutions like there's the local mortician and a couple of other people are really pushing back against him, and he making it so that he can't close down the beach when he wants to, right?
Yeah, because he originally closed down the beaches because the cause of death is probable shark attack. But then when the mayor finds out, I guess it's implied, he kind of smoozes the coroner attention. Oh, I was wrong. It was a boating accident.
Yeah.
And even the chief's right. Yeah, boating accident. You sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Okay.
Well, because it's and that's another thing. 80s movies had this kind of moralism about them. I don't know if guys have noticed this about a lot of older movies. They have this kind of moralism to them. A person doesn't get, at least initially, at least for some of them, some people don't get hurt unless they put themselves in a situation where they can get themselves hurt, right? For instance, the first victim is a young lady who obviously she's with people, she's with teenagers or maybe young adults.
It's like it does have like this theme of like carefree, even irresponsible teenagers who they're at the beach, they're drinking, and she goes out and jumps in the water with only one guy on the shore who even knows she's out there.
And she wants
very
him
drunk
to swim with
and
her.
Not a great person to run in and save her if something goes wrong. So it's just not a good swimming situation.
And she doesn't even know him, and he doesn't know her. They've probably just barely met at this party. I think there's some vague implication that something a little bit spicy might happen between the two of them, but obviously this being a PG movie, nothing more than the vaguest of implications can happen. But then she goes swimming, and he is he says he's not drunk, but you can tell he's slurring his words, he's stumbling around, he's drunk, and he passes out on the beach before he can even get out into the water. So great lifeguard there, huh?
I was gonna say he is very literally blackout drunk.
Yep.
Yeah, and the next day he it's almost like he tells the sheriff about it.
Yeah, the first thing he
does
does
go
is
to the authorities,
he-
but it almost seems like he's trying to justify himself.
No, he's trying to save himself, Jeff. He's trying to save himself just in case something happens to this young woman. He's like, no, I did the right thing. I called it in, right? Which, obviously if something bad had happened and he was trying to cover it up, that would be one thing. But he's just hoping to not get in trouble at this point. So, yeah.
I know, he's like model boyfriend material right there.
Oh yeah, I called the cops about you disappearing. That's model boyfriend material. Yeah, no. But so yeah, and then sheriff tries to shut down the beach, can't, and they don't get it shut down until an incident that happens later when the shark attacks again, and this time it's it's in the middle of the day, and it's on when there's a large crowd around, and also the victim isn't a teenage or young adult woman, it's actually a little boy, right?
Yeah.
But even then, the city council only agrees to close the beach for 24 hours, and Brody's like, what? I didn't agree to that. So,
yeah.
And then also,
I really like how the police, though, there's only two of them. There's the sheriff and one deputy.
Yeah.
They don't have a budget for a lot of law enforcement, and they only get extra help at certain key points in the year where there's a lot of people coming onto the island. So I think it's great how this movie has such a small, Chief Brody, he's really mostly on his own. His deputy can only be so much help to him.
Yeah, and the impression I get of this deputy is he's Chief Brody. The impression I get of him is he was a police officer in a larger area, like a different area, and then he kind of gets.
Yeah, Brody was a police officer in NYC, and he left New York to be the police chief in Amity for the very reason that it was a much quieter place, up until the shark showed up.
Yeah.
Yep, he comments about how New York was getting dangerous, and he wanted to move his family somewhere safer, which is very ironic because he moves into this small town, and then this happens, and he's in charge of this enormously dangerous situation.
Yeah.
And while I'm thinking about that's another thing that was changed from the book to the movie, is that Brody's fear of water was not in the book. That was a character quirk created for the movie.
Well,
yeah, you want to add something to a hero that makes them not invincible. You want your hero to have a weakness.
And
it supplies a way for them to struggle. And that's a good thing for the character.
I didn't catch up on that, BJ. How deep was that fear of water? I kind of got that there was a fear of water, but is just a swimming pool he'd be okay with, or is he completely afraid of that, or is it just the grand ocean that he's afraid of?
They don't really go that deep into it in the movie. Like I said, it's not something that's in the book. So if I had to guess, I would suppose it's probably more of an ocean thing, because after the first or the second shark attack, one of his sons is playing in a boat that's tied to the dock, and he's freaking out about that. So I'm thinking it's probably more of an ocean thing.
He mentions it's a fear of drowning. They don't mention it, but he was probably young and had an incident where he nearly drowned, and that gave him a fear of water. So in the dinner scene, he mentions it, that he's scared of drowning. It's a phobia he has. So he never goes in the water. When he goes to the beach, he just stays on the beach. He doesn't go out and swim at all. Which adds to it, because he later has to go on this boat to go out and find the shark, because he knows he has to do it. He's got to make sure that the beach is clear, because he is a hero type, but he's got to overcome all of that phobia.
I can understand, though, the fear of the ocean, though, right? Because it's big, and many sailors have a healthy, people who spend their whole lives out there have a healthy respect / fear of the ocean because it's big and it doesn't care about you. And I mean, it's very calm in the movie, but if you've ever seen like other depictions of the ocean or great seas when there's a storm going and the water just is almost alive and very menacing, yeah, it can get really scary out there.
Yeah, I think I have a phobia of the ocean too. I wouldn't want. I mean, I wouldn't look for a way to get on a boat and get out in the middle of the ocean. I wouldn't want that. It's, yeah, just the idea. It's so much water and it's so deep and like what strange things are underneath it. I totally get the phobia of it. But go ahead, BJ.
So I was just going to ask, and I think you might have answered the question for you during that little bit, but I was going to ask have you guys ever been like on a boat out on the ocean? Not like I don't even necessarily mean like deep ocean, but like just on the water in the boat that's like not a lake.
I have. I think I've been.
Well, you're thinking about
on a few like small things like that, but not for any appreciable amount of time. I think my wife has gone on a cruise, and she keeps wanting me to go on a cruise. No, yeah, my wife has gone on a cruise, now that I think about it. She has gone on a cruise. I have not. She keeps trying to talk me into it since it's a really good time. And eventually I do plan on doing it with her just because it does sound like a good time. But
yeah, I know people who like going on cruises. I don't think I would enjoy a cruise very much. Not because I'm scared of the water or anything, but just because I'm a large individual. So the idea of me in a confined space is not really claustrophobic either, but just the idea of being me size in a place designed to pack in as many normal sized people as possible doesn't sound like fun to me.
Yeah, I can see that, especially since unless you have all the money in the world, you're going to get one of those tiny interior cabins, and you're going to get, I think the term packed in like sardines becomes applicable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have a little confession. So
yeah.
I watch a lot of like maritime disaster documentaries. So honestly, the idea of going out in the ocean is a little bit like I just already mentioned, but I think the idea of like being on a ship and then the moment that like it springs a leak and it starts flooding compartments and you're like 3 levels down and you got to get out. I mean, that's got to be hard. So if I ever go on a cruise, I'm just going to be like, there's going to be a buffet and other things and like magic shows or whatever they do on cruises. But the whole time I'm going to be thinking, okay, this is my stairwell. This is where I got to climb out and all of that. I don't think it'd be very fun for me.
I mean, Jeff, boats are always leaking. That's a constant thing. There's always water on the boat. It just depends on the various assorted systems in place, whether or not those systems are working to keep the boat, on top of the water as opposed to down inside of it.
That's such a comforting thing to say,
thanks,
Gary.
and no, I kind of was saying that on purpose. No, but in reality, all of those systems work.
Yeah, it's true. It's a very irrational fear. People go on cruises all the time, and it's fun, and they have a great time. Yeah, you're right.
So in the portion of the movie when they are on the boat, the 3 men are on the boat, and it's covering what's happening to them there. The boat goes through a lot of things, and you notice that even after like certain terrible things happen to it, right? And it seems like, there's a lot that happens to this particular boat before they completely give up on it, right? There's a point where he says, there's a pump in the stowage locker over there, go get it. And then he can, Brody can like he picks up this little thing that's about the size, just about the size of a largish drink bottle, and it's got some hoses on it, and he can just sit there and pump the water out, right? There's even if something bad is starting to happen to a boat, there's lots and lots of steps before it finally just completely gives up and falls under the water, right? So, said,
one of the reasons I have a phobia of a boat being on a boat when it's sinking is because when a boat starts to sink, typically, at first it seems like nothing bad is happening. The deck is relatively level. You may not even know that it is sinking. But then what happens is that the balance of the boat begins to shift, and then it tips over. It can tip on its side. It can even break in half. All these things happen, and suddenly your way out is now a lot harder. You have to climb instead of walk upstairs or something.
The term is listing. It lists, and then it capsizes.
Yep. And in this movie, it's a small boat, but it does start to eventually list. What did you say?
Yeah, list, as in the
list,
as in a list of items. Kind of like a series of items written on a paper. List.
Yeah, I get it. We're learning words. Yeah. I understand.
Once again, English is kind of a dumb language.
But yeah, so that's it. This happens on this boat, and then there's like lots and lots of things. There's a point where where an engine, even after the engine like kind of breaks a little bit, they can still go back and fix it. But the problem is they have to deal with the shark. If they didn't have to deal with the shark at that point, they would have just been able to fix the things on the boat and then get them back into shore, and it all would be well. But obviously they don't, because the movie plays out the way it does.
So kind of on this topic while I'm thinking about it. So they're on the boat, right? And it seems like Quint has finally kind of come around to the idea of leading the shark towards land rather than chasing the shark out to sea.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone else is pretty happy about it. But then Quint sort of runs the boat to break down. Like they try to get him to slow down and he doesn't.
So
They don't really explain why he does that, so just out of curiosity, why do you think he does it?
I get the impression that Quint, in all reality, it feels like... So now we have to actually start looking at the characters, right? So we got Brody, who seems to be at least placed in this situation as kind of the everyman, right? He's a person who's not very familiar with sailing. He's a person who's not very familiar with
and the
sharks.
Audience is not familiar with sharks or sailing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
versus
that's why he's the everyman.
Versus the other two, Hopper and Quint. Hopper and Quint are kind of, in my opinion,
Hooper.
So Hooper and Quint, who are, in my opinion, two different versions of Ahab, right? So they're both chasing the white whale, as in this shark. Hooper, both of them have had experiences. It covers that in the movie. They both have had experiences where they've been attacked by sharks, right? Hooper channels this shark attack into becoming it happened to him early in life, and then he uses the resources, because it turns out he's a man with a lot of resources. He uses all of his resources to go and study sharks. He starts to learn everything he can about them, because he wants to know everything there is to know about them, and he's absolutely fascinated by them, just the same as Quint is. Quint channels his experience with sharks into someone who into getting revenge on them, right? He wants to get his vengeance. Instead of learning more about sharks, maybe he does learn more about sharks, but only so that he can learn how to kill them more efficiently. And you can see when it shows the interior of his house, he's killing sharks is his business, and business is good, right?
So yeah, and that's another thing that was not in the book that's in the movie, is that Quint was on the USS Indianapolis. That's something that was added on in for the movie. And another fun fact, according to the making of thing I watched, they had a few different drafts of Quint's speech about Indianapolis, and the guy who played Quint, Robert Shaw, he didn't really feel like it fit his character, so he asked if he could write this. He asked if he could write the speech, and Spielberg said yeah. So arguably the best part of the movie is Quint telling him about what happened to that ship was more or less Shaw's own writing.
That is
it's a great scene.
That is a really good it kind of sets the tone for his character, and I think in my opinion this is like he's been chasing sharks and he's been getting his revenge, but then he sees this one and it's the biggest shark, and it's kind of like the height of his revenge now. He can do this, and then maybe he'll feel complete. Obviously probably won't, because obsession is like that, where you'll never feel truly complete, even if you do like hit that higher and higher goal post. But in this particular case, he sees this new goalpost and he knows he'll never be. And so he starts doing irrational things. Like you said, he pushes the boat, even though he can see that he's pushing the boat harder than it's supposed to be pushed at that point. He knows the engine's dying. He knows that there's not, he shouldn't be, he can see the little meter on the thing redlining, and he's like, no, I'm going to do this harder. And then
they're trying to outrun the shark too.
Well,
it's kind of a, yeah.
It's not,
so he's pushing it too hard.
Like,
they warn him, but they are trying to get away from the shark. This whole expedition has been a complete and total disaster, and they didn't see it coming at all. They really thought that they could handle this. And so they're heading back to shore, to at least shallower waters, so that they can have a better situation there. And they'll be closer to the shore so they can get away better. But the shark is coming after him and chasing him.
And then
But I sort of feel like Quint he's a guy that just doesn't back down. And I think that's part of his character. Is that even though he's way out of his league, even though he's this amazing sailor, but he's way out of his league and he won't back down, because that's not his character.
And he does, after he breaks the boat, he realizes, wait a minute, I've gone a step too far. And he has this realization when he goes down there. I think it's because during his little monologue speech, he's talking about the things, and at the very end of it, he says, that's why I hunt sharks, and that's why I'll never have a life. Oh, that's why I'll never wear a life vest ever again, because he knows if he's in the water, he's just going to drown, right? So when he goes into his boat and he sees the terrible disarray that it's in at that point, and then he sees the two life vests, and he's like, okay, I may have gone a little too far. And he breaks out of this kind of fugue state, or what, this obsessive state. And then he says, okay, Hooper, let's see if you can solve this problem that I know I've exhausted everything I've got at this point. Let's see if you can solve this problem.
So yeah, I can see that, but like I said, this is maybe my own interpretation. I don't even know if I believe it, but when I was watching it last night thinking about it, I'm like, do you think there's a chance that, like, maybe at that moment, like the night before, he just revisited his memory of what happened to the crew of the ship he was on in World War II. He just relived that situation, and now he's up against a shark that is doing stuff that it shouldn't be smart enough or strong enough to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of wondering if maybe in that moment he's afraid, but doesn't really want to show it, and that affects his thinking, and that he says he's going to lead him back to shallow water, and that's a good plan, but then because of his fear, he loses his rational and pushes the ship to destruction in his attempt to get away faster. Like I said, I don't know if I really believe that myself, but it crossed my mind.
I mean, I agree that it's irrational. I think we agree that it's irrational behavior. I think the only thing that we're disagreeing on is that it may be the particular motivation of it, because where I think it's kind of his obsession with taking this out. You feel that he's afraid, and both of us come to the conclusion that he's acting completely irrationally at this point. And then he breaks out of it when he says, okay, Hooper, your turn.
And that's fine. Like I said, it doesn't really... They never go into why he pushed the engine to destruction, which is fine, because the whys don't really matter. It's just...
Well, part of this, going outside of the movie a little bit, you want some sort of story element that strands them out in the ocean, because that forces them to confront the shark. People will, after everything goes wrong, most people would say, okay, well, this didn't work. Let's go back to shore. Let's get a bigger boat. Let's get more barrels, more equipment, more people, and we'll go back out again. But, so you escape. Obviously, it's going bad. You need to escape the situation. But then that wouldn't help the storyline of the movie. And I think it's hard to know exactly what it is. We know that Quint is just a very bizarre person, and he's had some traumatic things in his past that have really made him, in a sense, become a very unusual person, where he's obsessed, and at the same time he understands what that shark is like. He's been close to them, and in the Indianapolis, it's interesting that they selected that story, because I have read a book about the Indianapolis, and people had to take turns. So they were on a raft, and the rafts weren't big enough to hold everyone, so they had to take turns as to who was in the water and who wasn't. But they knew that whoever's in the water could get eaten by the shark, and so they had to be in the water despite that. So it's just this horrific experience, and I think anything like that, the fact they put that, they attached to his character, means that that he's going to be a little bit irrational. And when he was going towards shore, I sort of think that he was thinking that he wanted to get them out of there, and just going towards the shallows was probably an excuse to get back to the shore and just to abandon the entire effort. But at the same time, he can't come to the point where he will admit that he wants to abandon the expedition. He doesn't want to admit that. So going to shore and getting out of there quickly was just his way of handling it. I don't know, we could theorize forever about it.
Yeah. But
the point is it's a story element to bring suspense into the situation, because now the boat cannot save them. It can't get them back to shore.
Yeah,
they're now stuck out here with the shark.
They're backed into the corner, and they start to look to other things that are available to them. They've got Hooper's little cage and his particular setup. Now they allude to the fact that Hooper's got like these specialized darts, like a special poison. I imagine, and he's got kind of a wild plan, right? It's not the needle on his thing isn't big enough to get through the skin, or at least not into a good spot.
I've heard that the skin of sharks is actually very rough and sandpapery. I don't know. I've never petted a shark before, I admit it.
I don't either. I have heard that it's one of those. It's like a weird skin that, like you cannot rub your hand across it or something like that. Like it doesn't. It's kind of like the opposite of. It's very frictiony, where you, if you put your if it comes into contact with your skin won't slide across it. It'll just like catch on it, and then it might even tear up your hand or something like that.
Yeah, I might be thinking of something else, but is it shark skin that if you run your hand along it one way, it's smooth, but if you try to rub it the other way, it's rough?
I know there's plants that do that. I don't know if there's shark skin that does that.
I could be thinking of something else, but so that's not a fun fact because I cannot confirm or deny the truthfulness of that fact.
Yeah, so sharks don't feel. I just checked on it, but yeah, they don't feel smooth. They're actually have very, very rough skin. So yeah, if you ever have a pet shark, you won't be able to pet it. Not really.
Yeah, that's
for more than one reason.
It's on my bucket list, Jeff, to have things to have, pet shark. That does not sound like a happy thing.
Well, now we know what we're going to do with all the podcast money. We're going to take Jeff and Gary out on a boat.
But put some chum in the water. We need to pet a shark just to see what it's like.
It's for science.
So Hooper, I can never get this.
Hooper.
Richard Dreyfuss character gets into this cage, and he's got this little, basically a tiny spear with some poison in it, and he's gonna poke. Now,
poke it in the mouth, because that's the only place he can get the needle to go through the skin. Is through the mouth.
I really like Quint's original reaction when they're initially loading the boat with this equipment. Quint, he sees it and he kind of understands what's going to happen. He looks at it and he's like, you put together the cage goes in the water, you go in the cage, the shark's in the water. And Hooper's like, yeah, that's the entire plan. And then Quint,
well, and a duty fair Spanish ladies.
He's just like, you're gonna die, and I'm gonna have fun watching you die while it happens. It's because on the other hand, I think that's one of those reasons why he lets him on the boat, because he's like, I see you are just as crazy as I am. Because it's like, anyways, yeah. No.
And they don't get along. At least not at first.
No, they don't.
Quint and Hopper, they don't get along until finally they start telling sea stories and showing their scars, and they realize that they're very much alike. And from then on, they get along very well.
I wouldn't say very well, but
they start.
They at least have respect for each other, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it shows these three bouncing off each other pretty much the entire time when they're on this boat. They keep maybe not Brody and Hopper, because those two seem to understand each other a little bit more. They're about the same age. On the other hand, Quint is very much older, and he keeps having problems with both of them over the course of this thing. On the other hand, he very much understands his place in this particular dynamic, so he usually, gets with more with one or more with the other as in appreciation, right?
Yeah, it seems like to me at least, his problem with Brody is that Brody is a landlubber who made it so he had to go along, and his problem with Hooper is that he
basically
doesn't see Hooper as like a working man.
Well, I think his problem with Hooper is that he sees him as kind of this richer version of himself, and he's like, I don't like the fact that you're a richer, younger version of myself, and I don't like that, so I'm going to push back on this, even though I can't legitimately find a reason. Like, I can't kick you out because you're a landlubber, because you're not, because in reality he knows as much about sailing as Quint does, right? It's kind of like, but then
I don't know if they're completely comparable, but they're both proficient.
Yeah, they're both very proficient. When they're fixing the boat, both of them are down there in the engine space fixing it. When they're tying knots, Quint can't find any fault with the with all the stuff, with the way he handles the blinds and whatnot. When it comes to driving the boat, Brody's like, I could drive the boat, and then Quint's like, no, Hooper drives the boat. You throw the chum, which is basically,
Yeah.
you
do the easiest job.
you have the simple job because I don't trust you to do even the vaguely hard job.
I think my favorite line of this entire movie is when he's throwing the chum, and then for the very first time, we get a really good close-up look at the shark, and it comes out of the water. And the first thing he says, he doesn't like scream or do anything else. He just kind of like slowly walks back, and it goes to Quint, and he says, "We're gonna need a bigger boat."
And that is,
I just think it's the most perfect reaction ever. Hollywood reactions are often just these dramatic things that people do, but I think the more realistic reactions and the more interesting ones are when people react more like in that situation, where he doesn't jump up and down. He's just incredibly shocked by what he just saw, and his response is just to go to the person who's in charge and tells him, "We need a bigger boat.
We need more resources for this particular situation."
Yeah, so again, according to the making of thing I watched, that line was actually ad-libbed.
Even better.
Sometimes those are the best lines.
Bigger boat. Yeah, apparently in this movie, Steven Spielberg let the actors do a lot of ad-libbing.
And
yeah, that's good.
I heard rumors, BJ, you're the one who watched the making of. I heard rumors that the shark, because it's a robot shark, right? And I heard rumors that it was a cursed item. Anything
they
to
had
that?
a lot of problems with the shark getting it to cooperate, right?
So in the making of thing, so one of the big problems with getting the movie made was that they couldn't find anyone to make the shark, because like pretty much everyone they worked to, like every workshop, whatever they went to and described what they needed to get done, said, no, that's impossible, it can't be done. So what they did is that they tracked down the guy who made the giant squid in 2000 Leagues Under the Sea, and they asked him, and the guy's like, oh yeah, I can do that. And he did eventually, but yeah, for much of the shoot, the shark did not work. And apparently, shooting the movie as a whole was just no fun.
It was a hard movie to make. Yeah.
Well, they talk about how they would be out on the ocean, and to give the sense that they're like alone and isolated, they're shooting like out into the ocean, so there's nothing but horizon. But like every other day or something like that, a boat would show up on the horizon, so they couldn't shoot anymore because there's a boat in the background. And they decided that it would take less time to wait for the boat to exit the camera shot than it would to like readjust all the boats they had to do shooting and all that. It was like, what they say, it would take an hour for the boat on the horizon to pass through the background. It would take like an hour and 15 minutes for them to readjust all the boats and cameras and stuff. So they would just have to sit there and wait for this boat, miles away to clear the horizon, so they didn't have it in the back shot.
And boats are not, especially smaller ones like this one kind of is, like even the boat in this movie wasn't exactly the smallest boat, but even this one, there's a lot of like motion, and it feels really weird to be on it. I've been on a few small boats, BJ, but not. Yeah. But I can just imagine the kind of like it's exhausting being on a boat like that, where everything's kind of moving and you're kind of having to adjust yourself to being on it. So yeah, I could.
Well, if you want to walk from the back to the front of this boat, you have to actually walk with the little tiny space that's on the side of it. And they show that a lot as they're walking back and forth. They have to go to the very side of the edge of the boat and kind of like inch your way across. And one slip in that position, you're in the water.
Yeah, I imagine that's you're going to get wet a lot too. And
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I know there's at least one horror movie out there where it kind of covers that, where there's two people and they're in the water and their boat's there, but there's no ladder. And it's like there's like 10 feet or like even like 4 or 5 feet between them and being inside the boat, but they can't get in because it's all like slippery side of the boat. It's an interesting. It's not this movie, but it's an interesting concept where.
Well, and boats should have a ladder at the rear of the boat.
No, in this one, there was no. I mean, unless you counted the lettering on the side, this boat didn't. Even the one in the Jaws movie didn't have like anything on the side of it or on the front of it where a person could climb up. It's kind of smooth that way, so it's interesting.
So kind of backtracking the conversation
that's
here
another fear I have of boats. Not to backtrack, but one of my fears, and this is another irrational fear, but if you're on a boat and the engine's running and you're going towards land and you fall off the boat, well, that boat's going to continue to go and you're going to be left in the ocean while your boat goes on and on forever. Okay, enough of that. Well, go ahead, BJ.
Okay, so anyway, just gonna throw this in really quick. So in many people's opinions, the shark not working most of the time was sort of a blessing in disguise, because apparently the shark was supposed to get a lot more camera time. But how it ended up is that since they couldn't use the shark very often, it turned into to use other people's description. It turned into more of an Alfred Hitchcock film than a creature feature.
Which really works out well. You don't get a good look at the shark until way into the movie. And the moment you see him, you're like, wow. You get to have the same kind of experience that the characters have, which is they know there's a shark, they know it's big. They didn't know it was that big. And so there's this wow moment that you get to experience with them.
Yeah, they kind of show the shark a little bit when it gets the guy in the pond. But like the first out of water shot of the shark is during the we're gonna need the bigger boat scene.
Yeah. So we get
now some of the shots though, just real quick, some of the shots were not this robot. They did use real sharks. For some of the scenes, and they had to hire a group of special filmmakers to go to the south coast of Australia which is a place where there's a lot of great white sharks, to actually film those. And one of the interesting things is in order to film that cage scene, and to make these 14-foot sharks, not as big as the 25-foot sharks, they had 14-foot sharks, but to make them appear bigger, they used a smaller cage. And then on top of that, they hired someone who was not very tall to go into this cage and wear a diving suit, which has got to be really, really scary.
Well, I don't know if they hired anyone. They had sort of a smaller... They had like a mannequin, a model.
Well, actually, no. So in the making of that I watched, they did have a mannequin and a model that they put in the cage, but they also had an actor as well that would go in the cage, they would lower it down, and they would just film him there in the cage looking at the shark as the shark swam around in the background. And there would be another diver further off that would be filming this underwater. So they did that too, and the actor they hired did not want to go in the cage. It was very difficult and very dangerous, and so they struggled with that, which I completely empathize with.
Oh yes, now that I know Jeff's weakness, he has a deep and abiding fear of the ocean. But
yeah, speaking of, there was also another shot though that they were filming where they didn't have anyone in the cage, but they had lowered the cage in the water and they were getting ready. And one of the sharks just swam really close to the cage, so close that it actually got stuck in the cabling that was connecting the cage to the boat. And when this great white got stuck in it, it just flipped out and it was.
Isn't that in the?
They use that in the movie.
Yeah,
it wasn't planned at all, but there was this part where the great white shark is attacking the cage and it's just flailing around. But that's real footage of a great white being stuck in some of the cables and desperately trying to get out. It wasn't intentional at all. It just kind of happened.
Is this why they didn't get the no sharks were harmed in the making of this movie?
No, I don't know if they had that yet. Did they?
The shark survived. What happened is that it got stuck in the cabling. They cut it loose so the cage actually dropped down. So they got rid of the cabling from the boat so that the shark could untangle itself and swim away. And then it just kind of swam off. So the shark survived, apparently. Anyway.
Yeah,
but they actually changed the script just because they got that shot and it was so cool looking. They changed it so that the diver wouldn't be in the cage at one point, so that they could use that footage.
Yeah, in the behind the scenes, the underwater cameraman was talking about how the one shark that got caught on the cable swam away, but there were two other sharks like circling around, but they couldn't just leave the cage down there. So the cage that the cameraman was in, they lured down the bottom, and he kind of stuck his feet through the bottom of the cage and kind of lift the cage up like a skirt. And he walked over to where the other cage was, the one that got cut loose, kind of hooked it back up, and that's how they recovered that cage. Anywho.
So BJ,
yes.
and Gary, would you guys ever, if you got a chance, free of charge, to go into a cage and dive with some sharks, would you ever do it?
Dive with sharks in a cage.
Yeah.
Free of charge.
Free of charge.
I'd be tempted to.
Honestly, I know I'm a real sissy and I've made that known, but I actually might do it. Yeah.
I've done some weird things in my life, and I've conquered some fears. All right, let me tell you. So there's when in my army days, there was a guy who did cave diving.
Oh,
and it's
very dangerous. Oh,
I would
goodness.
never do cave diving.
Speaking of fear, I would not do cave diving either.
No.
Okay, and shark, the cage diving, I would swim in, you know what sounds less scary to me? Swimming in the water with the sharks. What's more scary is swimming in the cage with the sharks. Because the cage, something goes wrong, I'm stuck in cage, and sharks maybe would take a bite out of me. Cage would leave me on bottom of ocean, staring at the surface. You know, I'm in like 30 or 40 feet of water, and I'm like, yeah, I could see the surface, and my air's running out, and something's gone wrong, and I'm stuck at the bottom. Yeah, that's an absolutely terrifying experience, right?
So this is just the episode of existential. That's the word.
So
words.
Existential dread.
And one of my so this friend who went cave diving, right? He talks about how there's this cave it's an underwater. It's an under the ocean cave that feeds into a freshwater cave, right? And the layer of where it meets, because there's actually a very distinct layer of ocean water and then fresh water sitting on top of it, right? And that layer from the bottom, from the saltwater side of it, when you're looking up, it actually kind of looks like the barrier between water and air. And then once you get up into the fresh water, there's nothing, there's no cloudiness, there's no fogginess, there's no nothing. It looks completely crystal clear and transparent. And people have died because they think they've broken into air, and so they start to take off their equipment when there is no air around them. It's just fresh water, right? And you can just imagine that, where you think you're safe and you think you're perfectly fine, but then it's like, no, you are not fine at all. You're not in the air, you're actually floating in water, and it's just really, really clear, clean water that you're about to breathe into your lungs.
Yeah, much like Jeff has watched a bunch of nautical disaster documentaries or whatnot. For some reason, one day I got on a cave diving disaster kick. So yeah, no.
Yeah, I heard a guy I spoke to a guy once who went on a cave diving trip with a group of people, and they went into the cave and they were going through and some of their equipment got broken. So they decided, well, it's time to turn around. We have broken equipment. We shouldn't go further. So they went back and they took a wrong turn in the cave going back. And this was at a portion where they weren't diving. They had gotten to some air and they take off their equipment and they have to squeeze through this rocky tunnel. And as they were coming back, they took a wrong turn. And so they went 1 hour the wrong direction through this. And they realized through this small tunnel, and they realized that they had gone the wrong way. So they stopped and they couldn't turn around because there's not enough space. So they had to back themselves up for 1 hour all the way back to the place where they had made the wrong turn and then go through again. And all I could think of, I will never be brave enough to do cave diving. Never, ever, ever, ever.
It does sound absolutely terrifying. It's an interesting concept. It sounds like a really, really, really rich way persons to die, because it costs a lot of money and it's in exotic locations. And you spend all this money on this expensive equipment and you go to this exotic location to do something really, really, really dangerous. And it's like,
and you see things that no one else gets to see.
Yeah.
These really unique places.
Well,
True.
Jeff, that's what a camera is for, and that's what VR is for. Because a person who's got a VR set can now see anything that a cave diver has seen, right?
I don't know if I want to be the cave diver that takes a HD camera diving with him.
Well, BJ, that's a big payday, and that's why they do it one time, and then we're good.
But anyway, I'm very proud of us. I think that's the first real tangent we've had with Gary/mutual friend along with us.
Thank you.
It's like up until now we've been pretty on point, but now we're like, I guess it's kind of related, diving, but
yeah,
not.
But not really. I mean, apart from the fact that Richard Dreyfuss does Hopper's character, he does diving at multiple points in the movie, and you can tell he's kind of nervous whenever he does it, but he kind of talks himself into it, gets himself into it. It's one of those things that, and that's a very real human reaction when you're going to do something that's that perilous, right? That's genuinely terrifying. You're going to be like, okay, I'm gonna do this thing, I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to do this thing, and you're talking yourself into it, right?
Yeah.
And I see that, him doing that, and I'm like, yep, that's real. That's completely what is a normal reaction to this extreme event that you're about to go do.
Yeah, so kind of on topic and not quite as deep a fear as Jeff's fear he's revealing, but the scene where Hooper's diving on Ben Gardner's boat and the head floats out, that traumatized me as a kid.
Well, that's
nothing else about the movie I remember creeping me out, not the leg or Quint getting eaten, but just the head just popping out was unfun to my little kid imagination.
So
yeah, and of course they have to have the scene where they know there's a shark in the water, and they have to have somebody who goes in the water examining the boat that's been torn up. Of course, every scary monster movie jump scare situation, they're going to do that.
I remember the line that they're talking about before this, we're going to go out on the boat, and it's am I like, I don't think this is smart. It's like, no, it's not smart, but you're still going to do it. It's like, okay, am I going to go?
I'm not.
I think he's saying, or you're going to go do this, right? And like, yeah, I'm going to go do this. It's like, am I going to go do this with you? It's like, well, you're not drunk enough to do it yet, but they've got bottles of wine, so they're gonna.
Oh, I think I might be wrong, but I think it's the other way around. It's Hooper talking Brody going along. Brody's like, I'm not drunk enough to do that. He's like, yes, you are.
I do remember something along those lines where it's like, I have to get you drunk so that you can go do this stupid thing with me. It's not the smartest thing in the world, but then again, we're still going to go do it. So, yeah, it's kind of a fun line that goes into this. It's like, we shouldn't do this. Like, yeah, you're right, we shouldn't do this. Let's go. And then they go and do it. It's kind of fun like that. But
well, it's like at that point they're in the process of trying to collect evidence to convince the mayor and the city council to close the beaches because Hooper knows that the tiger shark that the Yahoos catch is not the one that killed the first victim because of bite diameter. So, and it's a pretty interesting scene because they walk up and Brody's there, and Brody's is so happy that they caught the shark. It's probably the shark. So problem solved.
Yeah.
And then Hooper kind of grabs and pulls him off the side. He's like, "That's not the shark." And Brody kind of drives down. It's like, "It has to be the shark. We don't have sharks like this." And Hooper's like, "Yeah, it's a rare shark in these waters. It could very well be the shark, but we have to prove it."
Yeah, and actually, I kind of agree with the mayor on this particular scene, because he's like, we need to cut it open to see, and the mayor's like, the last thing we need with all these people around is to have that little boy's body flop out onto the dock right now. And at no point does the mayor say that they shouldn't do like a full-on autopsy of the shark, right?
Well, he actually kind of does, because he gives people instructions to go dump it into the ocean.
Yeah, but he says don't do it till later. But at no point does he tell the people you can't do this. He just says tomorrow we're going to go dump it. So
I feel like it's kind of implied.
Yeah, it's implied, but it's not actually
because they don't really go do it until after Hooper goes to the chief's house with bottles of wine, and the chief pours himself like a regular glass of wine and drinks most of it. It's like, I'm gonna get another drink and we're gonna go open that shark. And Hooper's like, can you do that? And Brody's like, I'm the chief of police. I can do whatever I want. So I think it's implied that the mayor just wants the problem to go away. This was the shark. Let's just leave it at that. So Brody has to get drunk enough to get the old liquid courage to be able to defy the mayor and cut open the shark.
But then, I mean, obviously the mayor's reaction afterwards, after the big attack, right, on the 4th of July, because mayor's like, he's like, the sheriff's yelling at him and the mayor's in complete shock, and it's kind of it's not just that he's wrong, but he admits it afterwards. Like, my kids were on that beach too, and he's like, I brought this whole thing upon us, and it was all my doing. You told me repeatedly that this is the wrong course of action, but I still went ahead. I forced your hand into making this disaster happen right now. And then the sheriff's like, sign the paper so we can go on the boat, and then they go on the boat. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so actually one of the things I like about Brody is that he doesn't really start yelling and screaming until he's like out on the boat. Because like in the scene you just talked about, he's not really yelling at the mayor, but he is angry and he is asserting his authority on the mayor. You're going to sign these papers so that you're going to sign this check so we can hire Quint to go kill the shark. And another thing about Brody is that the buck stops with him, because there's the scene where the mother little boy that dies walks up to him and slaps him and says and confronts him with the fact that he knew there was a shark, but that he didn't close the beaches. And we know that he tried.
Yeah.
And he tried to close the beaches.
He could have thrown the mayor under the bus at that point, but he didn't, because he's like, no.
And his response is, because the mayor says she's wrong, and his response, which is a very interesting one, he simply says, no, she's not. In other words, he takes responsibility for it. Even though they told him no, he should have kept pushing, is what comes through his mind. He should have kept pushing.
And if he'd pushed as hard as he did in the hospital, as if he'd pushed back then if he'd pushed as hard back then as he did in the hospital, that little boy would have been alive, and he recognizes this, and that's why
it's kind of an echo from like what I mentioned a long time ago, in that a real case in the 1916 shark attack cases, the thing just escalated. People at first were like, oh no, it can't be, we can't close the beaches, this is a one-time incident, and then they thought, well, it won't happen again, but then it did happen again, and then it kept going more and more and more, and finally people just got their guns and patrolled every piece of water they could, and they just went all out trying to catch the shark. And this is like in Jaws, they show that, where as things get more and more escalated, people start to change because they're recognizing the situation more and more as time goes on.
So do you think the 1916 was closer to the Yahoos, or do you think it was closer to the final three in the boat?
What do you mean by Yahoos? What are you talking about?
Like
I can't follow.
I'm going to assume here, the Yahoos being the guys that after young boy dies, his mother, Miss Kitchener, puts a bounty on the shark.
Oh, you mean like that huge number of boats and fishermen that are just out there to catch a shark, and they have no idea what they're doing, really. Yeah.
Yeah, the Yahoos.
Yeah, well, in the 1916 story, yes, there were lots and lots of Yahoos out there trying to find them. And the Coast Guard was involved. It was a big thing.
One thing about those guys, so Quint was like an expert at killing sharks, right? But the Yahoos made up for their inexperience with numbers, right? And there was a lot of them out there during that period of time. And basically anybody who had something that would float, there's a whole bunch of people that were showing up, and they would get in anything that was going to float, and then they would just go out there. And a lot of these people didn't even know what, like they had boats, and some of them weren't. It felt very much like some of them didn't even know what they were doing. Like they had something that would float, they were going to get themselves, as Hooper says to the sheriff, because this is the scene where Hooper shows up. He's like, there's 8 guys that are going to be dead before they leave and it's not even going to be a shark that kills them. They're just going to kill themselves because they're going to capsize their boat, and then they're going to drown or something, right?
Yeah, like Brody, before he knows like who he is, he just knows he's a guy that seems to have his head on his shoulders. He asks him to try to get the guys crying on the boat to kind of knock it off. So he talks to them. They kind of chide back. He's kind of turns out, they're all gonna die.
Yeah, but eventually
they has a lot of good lines.
I think they at least stop the least experienced of the people. So at least there's someone who knows. Obviously, this doesn't save all of them, because that's one of the boat. That's the boat that they find later.
Yeah. So it's actually the guy that they thought knew what he was doing, Ben Gardner. So that guy was actually he was one of the townspeople on the island, and I read somewhere that Robert Shaw, who plays Quint, kind of based Quint off that guy. And in the making ofs, in the making of, Spielberg admitted that if there's a couple times that if I couldn't find another actor, I thought about maybe hiring this guy to be Quint. Kind of, sort of, not really, but it crossed my mind.
Hmm.
But yeah, instead he goes out and gets
eaten, along with his entire, like, all the people that who, I'm guessing that the boat drivers, they were just cashing in on whoever wanted to ride in the boat and then go do stupid stuff on the water, and then the stupid people were thinking they were going to cash in on this bounty, and they were doing all kinds of like stupid. I mean, obviously some of them were doing things that Quint did later, right?
Yeah, some of them were chumming the water. There was one guy who was like throwing dynamite in like the middle of the boat pack.
But it wasn't even dynamite. It was like, those were like M80s, right? Not even.
Oh yeah. I guess that's true. It was going to be dynamite, but Brody knows and stopped him before he could get on his boat
with a full case of dynamite. Obviously, that is a
There's
theoretical
so many people
way
making
of,
bad decisions.
that's a theoretical way of doing fishing, but you have to wait until you actually see it, not just like throw it into random areas. You're not going to kill a shark just by throwing a bomb in the water.
Yeah, it just illustrates how none of those people knew what they were doing.
Yeah, they were like...
And you needed Quint. Quint was the only one who was an expert at catching sharks.
And that kind of makes sense, where the people who actually knew what they were doing, people like Quint, weren't going to get off their butt for $3,000. All you're gonna do is attract a whole bunch of people who didn't know what they were doing. That's why I asked about the 1916, was because the kind of, were they attracting people who were more knowledgeable about dealing with sharks or things like that, or were they attracting people who were just yahoos?
Well, it was different back then because there was a lot of vigilantism. People went and they just bought as many explosives and guns as they could, and they just went out in boats and tried to search for the shark. And there was a huge news report about it, and they even, some news reporters, they would come and take pictures of people hunting for the shark, but they even, they posed situations where they got a bunch of people, put them on boats, and posed for the camera like they were searching for it. So some of the pictures are even fictional, where they just kind of put it together for the news media.
You mean news media?
There were lots of...
Jeff. You mean news media would make something that's fake?
The news media knew they needed a little theater to sell the stories, so yeah, there was a few of the pictures they had that were staged.
That they would never do that. How irresponsible of the news media back in 1916 to do something like that. News media these days are held to a much higher standard.
Boy, I'm sure I'm glad that, those days are long past.
Those days are long past, BJ. News media of modern era would never do something like that.
Never.
Ever sensationalize
it.
And make up facts about something in a modern story.
Never. So how's your chainsaw bayonet working, Gary?
My what?
Your chainsaw bayonet.
My chainsaw bayonet? Speaking of... Okay. Speaking of, they have actually...
What are we talking about here?
They have actually made functioning versions of that, BJ, because they thought it was cool.
I'm going to clue Jeff into the context here. So
that would be good.
So, during one of the attempts to ban quote-unquote assault weapons, I believe it was USA Today ran an article about how dangerous the AR-15 is, and one of the things they did was that they had pictures of all the attachments AR-15s could have, and unironically, they included a picture of a chainsaw bayonet.
Which someone has since then built because they thought it was cool. Functional.
Chainsaw bayonet?
Yes.
A chainsaw and bayonet. Are you familiar with the video? I mean, I know you're probably not because it's a console game, but have you heard of the video game Gears of War?
I've heard of it, yeah.
Okay. So that's sort of the gimmick weapon is chainsaw bayonets, but USA Today included it unironically, and anyone who knows a little bit about guns found that both hilarious and somewhat disconcerting that people actually thought that chainsaw bayonets were a common attachment.
Not common, even now where it's actually a functional attachment, but it's still definitely not a common attachment. But,
well, I mean, who wouldn't want to trim a bush or something? You see that they've grown a little bit too much. Just like crank the chainsaw bayonet, give it a nice trim.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I should let this discussion go because we are.
I mean, actually, no. That is a
I won't even say that we're like straying into politics anymore. We kind of stepped over and we're dancing in politics right now.
It's actually not a political. It's an interesting thing where
it's about the press. It's a comment about the press.
That's no. But yeah. I want to pursue this for a second to talk about the relationship between a fictional representation of a weapon and then what happens with that, right? Because I don't know if you guys knew this, there's a lot of guns that showed up in fictional universes, right? And even ones that were like close to reality. Like for instance, I know there's the movie The Predator, and then there's a couple other movies back in the 80s where there were weapons that were in those movies that were used by like normal people, like shotguns or like the minigun or things like that were theoretically like maybe possible, but not really. Like people weren't actually able to use that kind of stuff because it hadn't been like what was put in the movie was full on fiction, right? And then, but
yeah, the only way in Predator, you're talking about the minigun.
There's the minigun,
portable machine gun that is huge, that fires lots of rounds per second, and not practical for a human being to carry it around.
And then
but this was a big, strong, muscly guy. So
there's like a shotgun too, and there's a couple other guns that are used in movies like that. And then there were people who were teenagers when they were watching these movies, grew up, and then once they became adults, were like, okay, I want that gun from that movie, right? And then they didn't like just go to a gun store, right? They started making a serious effort to acquire this gun, and some of these people were very knowledgeable, like they were engineers or gunsmiths or whatnot, right? And so they went in to go acquire this gun because they were very serious people that just wanted to complete a collection or wanted to acquire the thing that was their childhood, right? And then they found out that no, this gun doesn't actually exist. And so what does an enterprising individual like that do? But make exactly the gun, and they make it into reality, right? And so that's probably what happened to this USA Today thing. Was the USA Today were like, okay, the chainsaw bayonet on an M16. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, you're saying that somehow the news reporter had found it,
reporting something.
And it really was just some enthusiast somewhere who had made it, and they thought this is a legitimate attachment you can put on this gun. Let's put it in the story.
Well, yeah. and people have since then were like, okay, but can you attach? All jokes aside, can you attach a chainsaw? And they figured out a way to do it. And just like the fictional guns in the 80s movies, they're like, this doesn't work like that. And I'm like, well, okay, it doesn't work like that, but can I make it work like that? Because it's kind of interesting the way that the enterprising nature, especially when someone is driven to do something. Like these people when they were teenagers, they saw these cool guns in a thing, and now they're adults and they're like, I want this gun to be mine, and I can't, but I can because I'm a gunsmith. And so they make it for themselves, and then they know that there's a demand for it, so now it becomes an entire line of guns up for manufacture, and now these guns are for sale, on a commercial basis, because if you have the right paperwork, right registration, right everything, you can own the guns from these 80s movies that were previously didn't even exist. They were just in the imagination of some Hollywood, director, right? And now they actually exist for real because some...
Yeah, but if you really did attach a chainsaw to the end of a gun...
Oh,
that chainsaw is going to be vibrating. How is that going to help you shoot straight? And plus, you have all the weight of the motor, and then Jeff,
it is not meant to be practical. It is meant to be.
It's meant to be.
No,
cool.
It's not even close to being practical. It's just the whole thing is funny.
And even a regular bayonet. The only purpose of the regular bayonet is to make your weapon slightly more deadly in a close combat arena. I only say slightly because, it's a chunk of metal. It's long and heavy. Clubs have existed and they're very lethal for a long time.
Historically speaking, bayonets were a major invention. They ended up replacing pikes on the battlefield.
They did. But regardless, but anyways, back... Let us ease off of this tangent, like this full-on genuine tangent, and then kind of get back to this. The news media maybe exaggerated something so that they could sell a few more pieces of paper. That's okay. On the other hand, I imagine the sentiment was at least there that these people were out there hunting the shark and trying to take control of a situation. So... at least there's that.
What's great about this movie is that monster movies often are very fictional. You have an alien from outer space as the monster, something that nobody has any evidence or has ever seen before. But sharks are real. This shark is exaggerated. It's way bigger than anyone's ever found a shark to be. 25 feet long. That's just huge. But and also shark attacks are extremely rare. I don't think anyone disagrees with that per se, but still the possibility does exist in the real world. And another thing about predators though is that a predator, whether it's a shark or a bear or a lion or anything, they're opportunistic, which means that as soon as they learn that there's a food source somewhere, that if they do this one particular thing, they'll get food from that, then what they'll do is they'll repeat that behavior, which is why it's a bad idea to feed wild animals, because you're teaching them a behavior by feeding them. They're going to repeat whatever it was that led to the reward of food. So if you walk out and feed them, they're going to come back the next day and expect more. And with this shark, or even like any wild animal, when it begins to see that humans are a source of food, it goes, oh, well, there's this kind of creature and they're easy to catch. So the problem is that when a creature does start feeding off of people, it creates a dangerous situation where that creature will come back again and again and again. And that's kind of what happened in 1916, is this one particular shark figured out that there were these people who loved to bathe in the water and they were super easy to catch. And so it just learned that behavior. It wasn't so much instinctual. It just was like, look, here's a food source. And so as it attacked people, it just went on doing it. So they had to eventually put the shark down. Same with bears. They learned that if a bear attacks somebody and you let him go, that bear will probably go and attack another person later on. So you have to put the bears down that attack people, because it learned a behavior that it's now stuck with. It's going to repeat that behavior over and over again because it was a behavior that led to success. So it repeats it.
I've got a question.
So this story though is based a little bit in reality, even though it's exaggerated.
I've got a question.
So it's good that way. It's good.
I've got a question though. How come nobody ever makes the movie about the buffalo.
Like a buffalo that just starts rampaging people.
Well,
a buffalo's not a predator. A buffalo just defends itself as it sees fit. It just goes around eating grass. It's not a predator.
BJ, you want to cover this one?
About why they don't make buffalo movies?
Well, because in all reality, more attacks happen by herbivores to people, right? Like,
yeah, isn't hippopotamuses the most dangerous animal in Africa? I've heard that before.
Yeah, the hippos are the most dangerous animal, I think, all told. And in North America, moose are the most dangerous animal. But I think they don't make movies about that because, yes, being attacked by an animal is one thing, but sort of the deep, dark, primitive fear that everyone has is the concept of...
The sharp fangs and the claws.
Sharp fangs in the paws, sharp fangs of the paws, and being a meal. No one likes the idea of being eaten alive.
Well, and the hippopotamus, from what I understand, is the most dangerous, but only because of numbers. There's one that's actually more dangerous, at least from a standpoint of its capability, and that's, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Cape buffalo.
I have not.
So there's this, I think it's in Africa, it's called the Cape buffalo, and the thing is smart. I mean, I'm talking like chimpanzee / high-end dog smart, right? So it's a clever thing, and a lot of hunters who go and hunt this thing have ended up being hunted by it. Like, it knows when it's being hunted. It can start, if it catches scent of you, it's like, oh no, there's a human in the area, and that human has a gun. It doesn't know what a gun is, but it knows that guns exist, and it knows the effects of guns for what, like, it's smart, right? It's crazy smart and dangerous. And then, it's big, and I think it's like, it's the size of a buffalo, right? And so you can imagine a buffalo size, a couple of hundred, if not 1,500 something odd pounds of angry, suddenly charging you from a direction you weren't expecting it from because it's running around in the tall grass. Yeah, it's a little bit scary. It's almost as, it's not as scary viscerally. I get that, because it doesn't have the claws, but shark attack
like a raptor buffalo
versus how many people get hit by a buffalo every year when they go to Yellowstone and are stupid.
See, that's a great movie premise. Attacking buffaloes.
I was going to say, I think the other thing about having, by and large, plant-eating animals do hurt humans more often. That's because humans are stupid and approach herbivores thinking that, oh, it's safe. Let me go put my kid on this bison so I can take a selfie with it.
Let's get up close and take a picture.
Yeah, I still, even horses, which are tame, I still have a very healthy amount of fear of, because dang thing's gonna kick me and I'm gonna die. I just know it.
I have to admit, horses. So I don't have a lot of experience with horses, but there's a few of them that I almost get the sense that they're like dogs, that they just want to run up and say hello to a human. I once had that where I walked past a horse corral area, and the horses just walk right up, and they're just so happy to see you, it seems like. But then there's other times, I don't know if every horse is the same, though. They probably have all different personalities, but yeah. Some of them are quite friendly around humans, but then... I get what you're saying, Gary.
Like around here when we were growing up, there used to be a few fenced-off areas that would have, horses and stuff. There's still some around, but it's not as many as there used to be. They're all subdivisions now.
They are very powerful animals. Yeah. So one kick from them, it's not going to be a good day.
Horses are weird. They're very powerful, but they're also stupidly fragile in a lot of ways. Because, for example, the like technically speaking, horses walk on their fingernails. That's what a hoof is.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Well, they're used to it. Their feet are built to.
yeah, but like their
for that kind of
ankles,
thing.
and quote unquote ankles, are like very fragile. We learned a little bit about horses way back when I was studying to be a vet tech because big animal practice is a thing, but I don't remember a lot of the details. But yeah,
All right,
yeah,
so
the horses are big, but also very fragile in weird ways. But anyway, why are we talking about horses when we're
we're
Jaws?
talking about
What's going on?
herbivores and the why we don't make horror movies about herbivores as opposed to predators, even though herbivore attacks account for more injuries across the entire world as opposed to predator attacks.
Yeah, I think it's just the predator response because even like Jurassic Park, you know, the first dinosaur you actually sees a brachiosaur, and it's this big swelling moment that's glorious because they do travel in herds and whatnot.
But that thing would
then the rest of the
totally
movie is
flatten
them.
their Jeep if they accidentally
Yes.
drove too close to it. And not even
Yeah.
close.
But then,
Yeah.
yeah, and then the rest of the movie is them getting their butts kicked by a bunch of predators.
Yeah.
I
So
haven't watched Jurassic Park in a really long time. We should do that.
Yeah. Wild animals are all wild. Hence the wild, the word wild in that. So a lot of people have this impression that animals are just like pets, cats and dogs.
no,
and stuff.
no.
No, not like that.
It took
They
Oh, that-
know the game of survival of the fittest, and they play it well.
it took thousands of years for them to domesticate the animals that are quote unquote domesticated at this point.
And I don't think cats are fully domesticated. Those things, they can be vicious sometimes.
You've had.
Okay, I've had some bad cats.
I was gonna say, you've
I'm
had
not saying
several
every
drowning
cat is bad.
Because back when I had cats, when you'd come over, you would always talk about how nice my cats are. I'm like, dude, all my cats have been like this.
Your cats were nice, but the cats I know were not friendly at all. There was one cat that didn't live with us, but it was in another house. But I went to it, and you would sit down, and if it was under your chair, you would suddenly hear this lion-like roar, and this.
Are you talking about my cat,
It was a
Jeff?
beast. No, there was another cat that was actually a feral cat that somebody adopted,
Huh?
and which is already a bad sign there. And it was just vicious. And as it walked around, it looked like a lion. You know how the shoulder blades go up and down really high on some, like on
Yeah.
a cheetah or something? It looked a little bit like that. I don't think it was fully house cat. I don't know, but they kept it as a pet, and that thing was vicious, mean.
Mm.
But other cats, when I was little, my cat was not friendly, hated me, and I think I know why, because children are not nice. They're not, even when they love cats, they're often not soft with them. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah,
So yeah,
totally too much of a tangent there. Okay, let's get back on.
actually we should start to wrap things up here. It's getting on to close to 2 hours here, so we should figure out how to wrap things up at this point. So Jaws, upon reflection, still good a movie. Watch it.
Well, considering 2 hours ago, we all said yes, watching. We're joking that that's the podcast. I think we like it.
Yeah. Even after discussion for 2 hours, it's still a good movie. No, I liked it.
Yeah, I think MythBusters did something about like shooting a compressed air
Yeah.
tank to blow up.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that works at all.
No, so it wouldn't explode like that, but they actually talk about it in the making of. The author of the book. It says that would never happen with a compressed air tank. That's unrealistic. No one's going to buy it. But Steven Spielberg told them that if I've had the audience for the last 2 hours, that they're going to buy whatever I sell them in the last 3 minutes. And like I said, compared to how it ends in the movie, the ending in the book, while maybe more realistic, is kind of a letdown because the kill shot on Jaws on the shark is like, it's like one of the best.
It's earth-shattering kaboom.
It's iconic.
And
The smile, you son of a bang.
And it doesn't come out of nowhere because at multiple times in the movie they talk about that kind of thing. Even if it's not real in real life, they establish it in the Jaws universe that
they establish the what's the word the believability.
Yeah, they establish the believability within the Jaws, and I'm willing to believe because they establish that. They say at some point, hey, be careful with those, they could explode, right? And so you're set up to believe that because they take the time to do that particular setup. And so yeah,
he has to shoot it. So he's got this. He has to be able to hit it while the boat is sinking, while he's got only like 2 feet of boat left, and he's sitting on the mast. He's about to go under. It's just a great moment where the suspense is building up to a climax.
Yeah, but it is a good moment, and it's.
So if you had to kill a shark, how would you do it, Gary? Like a 16-foot shark that was a naughty shark.
At 2 hours, really? If I had to kill a shark.
Tangent. I say, Gary, yes. I don't know if I made this joke on the podcast. I know I've made it off the podcast, but telling Jeff it's time to end the podcast is kind of like
asking for another conversation.
It's like, what's the joke? How do you know when a high council member is halfway through his talk?
They say in closing.
In conclusion.
Okay.
Asking Jeff if he has anything else to say is like the halfway point of the podcast.
Okay. I will give my 30-second synopsis of how I would kill a shark, right? My 30-second synopsis of how to kill a shark. Multiple, maybe explosives, but definitely multiple forms of trauma over a sustained period of time. Shark will die. Bullets, explosives, hit it with a club. I don't know. Don't care.
Get a bigger boat.
I wish I had the.
Yes.
Now I'm just thinking about the jokes we made when in high school English. We listened to Charlton Heston read Old Man to Sea. I wish I had the boy with me. I'd pick him up by the ankles, use him as a club against the sharks.
Okay, so yeah, BJ, your 30 seconds. How you kill shark?
How would you kill this shark?
I would just not go in the water. Live and let live.
Jeff?
Do the smart thing. Just don't go. When the mayor walks up and says, hey, why don't you go in the water? Be like, you go in the water, mayor.
Jeff, you've got 30 seconds to kill the shark.
People have been killing, this is kind of dark, but I mean, people have been killing large sea creatures forever. You just get a really big harpoon. And rather than just a barrel, you get a really big harpoon and a much bigger boat. They didn't have a big enough boat for a creature that size. It comes down to that. So their method was perfectly fine. It just wasn't big enough for the size of creature that they were working with, and they had no idea it was that big.
So Gary would use combined arms. I would apparently use human sacrifice, and Jeff would hire a whaler.
Yep, one that like scratches on a car on the chalkboard.
Okay.
Has years of sailing experience and is kind of odd, and will probably be irrational in some way.
So Jeff would hire Quint.
Have no ability to give up when things got really bad. So he would just keep going to the bitter end.
So Jeff would hire Quint and buy him a bigger boat.
Yeah, that's all you need. A bigger boat.
All right.
So, any final comments while we're attempting to wrap this up? Everyone approves of Jaws. We all like it.
Yep.
All-time classic. It's PG for a reason. Back when PG meant something, parental guidance is suggested.
Yes, definitely suggested. I would say it needs to be PG-13 or light rated R.
Yeah, I would say PG-13. Anyway, Jeff, you have 10 seconds to say something.
Something.
2. Okay, sweet. Thank you. So
This is where you tell us to go
Yes.
away, BJ.
Yeah, so fun fact. So the episode after this is actually going to be our 1-year anniversary.
Oh, and it's next is My Choice, isn't it?
Well, you claimed the movie in September, but me and Jeff have an idea of what we're going to do for our anniversary episode. But you can have the other episode in September.
Okay.
We can talk about. I don't know if you want to take part of it in what we have planned, but
We'll talk after.
Yeah, we'll float past you. I told Jeff about this, but I'm willing to bet he's forgotten by now. Jeff?
Oh, sure. I forgot. Yeah.
Excellent. Situation normal.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so Gary, thanks for joining us once more and for increasing that viewer count. I guess the real test of that particular idea is going to be batteries not included.
Yes, that will be the real test of that.
So that hasn't been released yet, so we'll find out.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so Gary/mutual friend. I feel like that joke's been left by the wayside, but I'll say it at the end. Thank you for joining us once more. I'm BJ. The other guy was Jeff. And we'll see you next time. Can't believe we made it through the entire podcast without going dun 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 dun.